Is there anything you would do if, while in the hospital with a penicillin allergy, you had a brief visit with a loved one who had died a long time ago? That is precisely what happened to today's narrator. His mother passed away after he went into anaphylactic shock due to a penicillin allergy, but he was able to see her again. This narration, like the majority of my others, is available on the NDE website. All right, settle in, pour yourself a hot beverage, and prepare to be immersed in today's adventure. In the medical center, I was lying on the examination cart, my tummy protruding. An injection of penicillin was being administered to me by a nurse. Never before had I experienced an adverse response to penicillin as a result of this injection. I began to experience side effects as soon as the nurse started injecting the medication. My ears started buzzing and then got even worse. My pulse rate began to quicken and continued to rise. A rim began to encircle my visual sphere. I couldn't see beyond the brown border with pale dots as it shrank inward toward the middle. I felt like my tongue was going to burst out of my mouth. For fear of choking, I spittled out the piece of gum I had been chewing on. Just to keep from passing out, I was pounding on the metal cart side with both hands. As far as I could tell, the nurse was yelling out, "Code Blue." It was said that my heart rate was 180. I felt my heart giving out as my chest heaved. Somebody commented, "We're losing him." Thought I was going to die from my fear. My mind kept replaying the phrase, "Save me, Jesus," or uttering it aloud. In the midst of a whirlwind of dazzling reds and whites, remember yelling, "Save me, Jesus." Out of nowhere, a brilliant entity with its arms down, but outstretched, emerged from what seemed like a pool in the middle of this vast expanse. Stunning illumination, but no distinguishing traits. Out of nowhere, I found myself in a pitch-black expanse devoid of light, but for a dazzling white dot that appeared as far away as a faraway star. I felt like I was hurtling toward it at light speed, and very immediately came to a spot where, still in this black hole, something white materialized before my eyes. Picture yourself in a dimly lit theater, staring at a blank white screen. Despite the lack of discernible borders, the whiteness was palpable. In contrast, I had no idea that I had a form. I was merely present. Because of the event, I was frightened as well. Somewhere along the line, I heard or experienced the words, "Do not be afraid." It was genuine, but I don't know whence it originated. Additionally, I had an experience that I can only describe as complete consciousness. It was more like, "Oh yeah, get it," than a linear progression of my life's experiences. But it didn't take away from how significant what I realized. Became self-aware of my narcissism. Also understood the impact my demise would have on my loved ones, particularly my dad. My family had just lost Mom a little over 2 years before everything happened to me. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss when I witnessed or imagined my brothers escorting my coffin. Emotions got the best of my dad. The starkness before me was not flat. I could discern what seemed like a big boulder from this vantage point. I stared into this depth at the boulder, and the whiteness or mist seemed to retreat slightly. The boulder was huge, and its hues ranged from predominantly gray to a variety of shades. Moss was visible on it. It was more like peering through a fog or a glass block into a verdantness, yet I could make out depth beyond it. Off in the distance, to the left of the boulder, I could make out what appeared to be a figure as the white fog gradually lifted to expose a human form. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that the figure was a woman. She wore a robe of chocolate brown hue, which she tied at the waist with a cream-colored cord. Her shoulder-length, wavy brown hair cascaded down her back. I could see her grin as the mist melted away from her face. She leaned forward a little, her arms slightly outstretched from her torso. The hazy white fog continued to encircle her bottom half, which I was well aware of. Neither her speech nor her thoughts communicated with me. Her presence was palpable. On this planet, She surpassed all standards of physical beauty. A sense of absolute tranquility washed over me. I failed to recognize her at first, but then it clicked. Who was that? My mom. It was my mom, even though I had never seen her in anything like this. She looked timeless. No matter how much you try, you can't put your finger on it. Upon my last encounter with her, her physique had been ravaged and rendered useless by the aftereffects of cancer. Still, there she was, more beautiful than anything I had ever seen or imagined. Just that, a feeling that she was waiting for me. Rushing over to her was not something I felt compelled to do. In that split second, I realized that I would go over and never come back if I dared to go forward. I was overwhelmed by two emotions. First, a sense of purposelessness and a lack of life experience. And second, the overwhelming fear of the pain it would bring my father, who had already lost my mother, to lose me. In my gut, I knew he wouldn't make it. Jesus, please, send me back, was my prayer. I suddenly found myself back in the exam room, surrounded by the sound of conversations. It seemed as if time stood still for me. Even though I couldn't put my finger on it, I can still vividly recall the feeling as if it had just occurred. After that feeling faded, the visage of the physician who had prescribed the injection appeared. "Am I in hell?" were the initial words that came out of my mouth. "I wouldn't call it that," he remarked amid laughter. I made such statement due of my disapproval of the doctor's physical appearance. One image that comes to me is that he looked like he was made of clay, like a claymation figure. The only difference was that his imperfections, such as moles, scars, and wrinkles, seemed to stand out more. People were milling about the area, with a few even peering out the open doorway onto the hallway. They all seemed like claymation characters to me. With the passage of time, they seemed less strange and more ordinary. It was my wish that someone would contact my sister and summon her to the medical center. I knew everything was going to be okay once she showed up and I recognized her. The experience for the day has come to an end. Typical of me, I can't wait to read everyone's opinions in the space provided. Until we meet again, may you remain safe and may blessings shower upon you.